Hello, everyone. I'm Joyce Griggs for United States of Healthcare. Welcome to our conversation with our insurance experts, Dr. Alan Farren and Jordan Shields. Dr. Farren and Jordan are here today to talk with us about how to write a letter of appeal and what happens when one of your insurance claims have been denied. Dr. Farren has over 50 years of experience on both sides of the stethoscope as a patient advocate, as a surgeon, and as a medical director for a leading insurer. Jordan Shields has many years of experience as a consultant for the insurance industry. He's written books, he's written articles, and he has worked with individuals, helping them to choose insurance that's right for them and their families. And I'm delighted to have a conversation to share with you today about how you can take charge of your healthcare when you get a denial of your claim. And we're going to take you step by step through how to write a letter of appeal. Jordan and Alan, great to see you guys.
Great to be here.
So, okay, there are some do's and don'ts, right? You have like 8 do's and 4 don'ts, or anyway, who's counting? But there are a number of steps that we can take, right, to get ready when we've gotten a denial. So let's just talk about it a little bit, just go back to what has happened and maybe set the stage for us a little bit, and then what we're going to do next.
Let me do that, Alan. So you've had a procedure, you've taken a drug, you've gone to the hospital, you've had surgery, whatever. You get a statement from the insurance company called an explanation of benefits, EOB. And the EOB says, we've received this charge from this provider on this date. We've changed the numbers around a little bit, or we haven't. And then we've determined whether we're going to cover it or not. And here's what we're going to pay you. What we're talking about today is that little middle part where it says, oh yeah, and by the way, eligible for reimbursement is 0. See footnote. Footnote says your medical claim is denied because fill in the blank. So our job today is to talk about when you receive that, what do you do? How do you proceed? What steps do you take? And the very first one, and Alan can start talking about the other ones, but the very first one is, don't believe it and don't panic. Just because they say not covered does not mean that it's not covered. What it can mean, or what it can be code for, is we don't understand, we don't have enough information, we're not sure that you've clearly made your case, there's missing information, whatever. The very busy claims examiner has this come across their desk, they're looking for, to check the boxes. What have I got? What don't I have? Denied. It's easy. Then they send it back to you. As you said, Joyce, let the games begin. They send it back to you to say, okay, we did the first review. It didn't pass. You're going to have to come back with a story. And that's when we start.
Okay. So take a deep breath. Right. Alan said that to me before. Take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath and don't do anything around the house. Yeah, don't kick the dog.
And don't operate any heavy machinery for a while.
Right. So what Jordan has alluded to is really to take the time to assess the situation, look at your explanation of benefits and then your evidence of coverage to determine what was done, and if that is explicitly stated in the explanation of coverage to be denied for whatever reason they state. So that's first thing is
assuming they stated it. They stated it.
Yeah, and it may not be stated clearly. So take the time to try to exactly understand. And if you don't understand, talk to your person like Jordan, your broker. Talk to your doctor to help clear it up. But the first thing you should not do is go directly and call the doctor's office and say, what's going on here and how come this was denied? That's about the last thing you should consider.
Well, you can do that if you want, but we wouldn't advise it.
Yeah. So read that language very carefully first.
Okay. And I could also go to my HR person, right? Maybe they could help me understand it too. Because I know what happens for me anyway. I get letters like that, and I personally have an emotional response. I get upset. And when I'm in an upset state of mind, it's very hard to understand language that's not written for the everyday person.
So yes, first of all, go to somebody that's not you. that gets it. I mean, it can be the doctor's office that would explain it, somebody on the staff who's very familiar with how this works, particularly when you're dealing with a specialist office, because they're dealing with these narrow areas all the time. If you have an HR manager at work, if assuming you have a group plan, or an office manager, they may have enough familiarity with it. And if they don't, and this is especially true of small companies, often they'll say, well, let's get our insurance broker involved, because the insurance broker has a lot of expertise in that. I mean, I have 45 years. So the idea that an office manager has been there 2 weeks would try and help somebody when I can help with 45 years, it's like, and that's what I'm there for. And that's what I get paid for on a continual basis. And then they can say, well, send it to me. Let's take a look at it. Maybe I can tell you right off the top what's going on here. If not, let's get the carrier on the phone and find out what's going on. But yeah, don't panic, breathe, and know that you have resources, which can be pretty much anybody that's not you, because you're in an emotional state, right?
It's really, really important. So, Ellen, I know many times you've said, first off, the first step sometimes is just ensure that the thing is accurate, right? I mean, sometimes something simple like your name, or I mean, literally something as obvious as that could be wrong. Is that right?
I think, yeah, it's essentially, these are the so-called administrative errors that happen not too often with carriers. It can be a wrong person, could be a wrong name, could be a wrong birth date, could be wrong number. Yes. So all these things are very simple. And so these are generally managed just with a phone call to the health plan, indicating what the correct name, birth date, social security number, et cetera, is. So those are the easy things, but the more difficult ones are when you're denied because of medical necessity, length of stay, wrong drug, et cetera, et cetera. So it's important to understand exactly what you're doing, why it was denied according to the language that you can understand. And then it's time to do your homework.
Before you go with that, I just want to mention one thing. So remember, and I was mentioning you can use other people. Sometimes you're not the best advocate for yourself, not just because of the emotional state, but maybe the language or whatever. There could be a lot of reasons. You can employ somebody or ask somebody to help you, but they will need to get a release from you called a HIPAA release. So the privacy and all that. But then once they have the HIPAA release and they send it to the carrier, they may speak on your behalf. They may ask questions about the claim. I mean, even as a broker, even though it's my case, my client, and you work for my client, I cannot call the insurance company and just blithely say, what's up? I can say, when did you send out the explanation of benefits? What was the date of that? I mean, I can ask the really basic information, but if I say why, what are the circumstances, they not only won't tell me, but they can't tell me. Oh, by the way, I have this release. So if you are going to be bringing in somebody else, be prepared to go through a little bit of paperwork. It takes a week, no problem. Sorry, Alan, go ahead.
No, that's important. I just want to underline that point, because a patient advocate, like people like yourselves, mypersonaladvocate.net, right? You have a HIPAA release form, and then they can help with understanding what's happening with this more deeply, because they can speak with your providers, whether they be the payer, the insurance company, or your doctor, or whomever, on your behalf. So that's really important. That's a really important point. So, okay, so now we've ensured the accuracy, we've read the denial language carefully, we're assessing, if it's that we're clear, we've gotten we've lined up our team to help us, but now it's homework time, right, Alan?
Absolutely. We haven't done homework for many, many years, but it's really important. And the homework should include looking at credible resources, like through the AMA, through the various specialty society, just to find out what is the current medical situation with regard to guidelines that are appropriate. And if you find guidelines that substantiate your claim in terms of why you feel it should have been approved and not denied, then make sure you keep a record. I think, even going back further, start a file, a special file that you have. So all your medical records, all the results of your tests, studies, people you've seen, everybody you've talked to, who was it, when did you speak with them, what was their phone number, collect all that information, because you're going to need that for the long haul here. And as a separate personal thing, I think it's important that when you have diagnostic imaging studies like a CT, like an MRI, any tests, make sure you spend a few extra minutes at the facility and ask for a CD. Have a disc with you, because if you're going to get a second opinion, if you're going to see someone else, they're going to want to have that information, and it's just very, very useful.
If you don't have the CD, what some medical groups are doing now, at least in my backyard, I've got UCSF is taking over a lot of medical practices, but they have an online, My Chart or whatever you want to call it. Sometimes they can append the X-rays or the MRI results to My Chart, which can only be accessed through login information. Makes it a lot easier for me to transfer the information to the carrier than to send a CD.
No,
So
that's
Alan's dealing with last year. This is so last year, the CD thing. Now you need the streaming.
Got news for you, buddy. It's very much this year.
it's very much this year.
And not everybody has My Chart and is in UCSF, and they're
Get with it, man.
medical
Get with
records.
it.
That's right. It's
Good
important. And I think also it's important if you can get the hard version to get it. So that you have access to your records at all times. But so now
Right.
looking at this, what we call the published literature, and what we mean by that is the medical literature, which is not Dr. Google, right? I know you make that distinction a lot, Alan, and I think it's important, for our listeners to understand that just typing into the Google search bar is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about going directly to these specific specialty organizations, or even to like a PubMed or some of these other places, right, to do our search.
Absolutely. Those are the places to start. And the most simple place to really start is like clevelandclinic.org or mayoclinic.org, because these are very credible, well-recognized organizations. So those are good places to start, particularly if you're not really comfortable with doing research. Going to the NIH or PubMed, looking at articles, it's very difficult for the layperson to understand what that is. So I think the Mayo Clinic sites and the Cleveland Clinic sites and other specialty sites have portions that are written specifically for the layperson.
And to be fair to Google, sometimes when you do a Google search, it will say, here's this article, and it will say Cleveland Clinic or whatever. So
Yeah.
in order to simplify things for myself, I'll go to Google, but I'm looking for the credible sites within it. And those are the ones that Alan mentioned, because I can't remember Cleveland Clinic. Well, Alan remembers Cleveland Clinic because he, interned there, and I know what it is, but many people, I can't think of these things. Google will at least help say, these are they.
I think that's really important. Then you look for those credible sites, and it may not be the first site that pops up, because that might be a paid ad from somebody who has an axe to grind or a dog in the fight.
You may have to go to the bottom of page 1 or the start of page 2, but look for something credible. And when you pop it up and you see a peer review article with 5 doctors' names at it, chances are it's credible.
If it comes from Mayo Clinic, we'll just reinforce that Mayo Clinic or Cleveland Clinic. These are 2 credible places that have a lot of great information that's distilled for the lay person, so that we could just understand it, as well as having access to, what we call the peer-reviewed literature, which is that scientific literature that if you have that level of understanding, you can dig into that as well. So what are we looking for? We do these searches. What are the things that we're looking for when we're doing our homework?
We're looking for things that substantiate what it was that you had done and what was the outcome. So it's very important to look for peer-reviewed literature if that's what you're going to do. I think also looking at the Mayo Clinic and the Cleveland Clinic areas to see if it's something that's pretty standard in the medical community.
Right. So there's all these different specialty organizations too, right? They publish what are known as guidelines. And these are the guidelines that every doctor, well, really, and I mean, at least in America, for these American associations are using to base, their care plan for you. So we want to look to see if it's in the guidelines a lot of times too. Isn't that right? Or is that just one place to look?
I think it is one of the places to look.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the AMA obviously has good information for you, American Cancer Society, the American Academy of Pediatrics. the associations that look at immunization practices. So all these, it really depends upon what you're looking for. What is your particular case?
But picture it this way: that whenever you're doing research, the purpose of research so you can finally write something about it. Humanize the people in the insurance companies, which I know is difficult to do because they all seem some bureaucratic, monolithic thing. But the person that's reviewing your claim is a human being who may or may not have experience, considerable or otherwise. And all they're really doing is pushing back to you and say, I don't get it. Explain it to me. Okay, once we've gone through, you made a mistake on social security number, you didn't get this information about prior authorization. Okay, that technical administrative stuff, you've gotten that out of the way. Now you're dealing with what Alan's kind of referring to now, which is medical necessity and why I need this and why this has to happen. It's a conversation. It's a dialogue. It doesn't need to be, listen, stupid, this is what's going on. No, it's like, okay, this is why, this is what, this is how, this is what I'm saying, this is what I need, this is when I need it. Really basic journalistic who, what, why, where, when, how, and so on. And that they'll respond to that because it's very plain, short, and then they look at it and go, okay. And then at least they have some basis for saying, okay, now that I've seen this, it's still denied because, and the because what you can then take your appeal the next step.
So I think
so it's important really not to be adversarial. I think that's the understatement, and that your responses need not to be aggressive, but it's really how can you help me as opposed to you didn't do this.
Right. Right. No, I think that's great. So stick to the facts, make it very factual, keep it short, edit out our emotions about the situation. If you want to write an angry letter to the insurance company for a private way of like getting it out, like write it down and then rip it up and throw it away, get it out of your system, but don't put that in your appeal letter.
Right.
Well, the other thing with it too is, have somebody else take a look at it because, some people write, I write tons of letters. Some people write letters very well. Some people have not written a letter in a long time. When my wife sends a long email or a letter to somebody, it's not her best thing. So she said, take a look at this, tell me what you think, and then I edit this and cut this and so on. The other thing, and Alan and I were talking about a client of mine that we helped finally get something resolved. It took him a year of denials and reversals and so on. But he said, okay, here's the letter I'm sending. It went all over the map. And both of our first responses said, well, this is great. This is really good background information. However, your letter needs to be this big and not this big because you need make a clear opening statement. Here's what I want. Here's what I need. Here's what I'm enclosing. The other material can be attachments. So we basically schooled him in how to write an effective letter. A lot of people can do that. It just so happens that's what we do pretty much for a living. But it needs to be clear, it needs to be short, and it needs to have a call to action on their part. So you need to tell them, this is what I need from you, and this is when I need it. You can assume nothing. Oh, well, I'll send them the letter and they'll get it from there. No, they won't. If they even read it. If I'm looking at a 5-page letter that comes in the mail and I've got 21-page letters, which letters do you think I'm going to read first? That 5-page letter gets stuck back on the stack, as it should be, because either you can't make a case or I need to get my head around it and I need some breathing room to do that. So short, simple, clear with a call to action.
Okay, so we've done all our homework. Now we're writing and you're saying start with your call to action, which would say something like what, for example?
Pretty simple. It's this has been denied, and this is why I feel it has not been denied correctly, and indicate that for the following reasons, based upon whatever the research is, which will be an attachment attached to the document, and be very clear as to if there are quotes from a given specialist, another physician, include all that information, but it needs to be orderly, thoughtful, needs to be concise, and brief. And very brief.
The case Dr. Farren, I respectfully request your reconsideration of the denial of my claim dated for this procedure on this date of service with this provider, all in the first sentence. Now I'm looking at it going, I got it. I know where I'm going. I know what I'm doing and all that.
Mhm.
I disagree with your conclusion for the following reasons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you very much. I will follow up with you shortly. Let me know if there's somebody else I should be sending this to. Appreciate your attention. Sincerely, Jordan Shields. Bang, done.
Mhm.
One page only, unless there are attachments.
Mhm.
I have attached this for the latest guidelines and all that for your consideration. See second attachment.
That's awesome. That's really super helpful. Now, would the person in my doctor's office that deals with insurance be able to help me with this letter? Is that something that you ever see happen? Or is it like, could they look at it for me, or is that a rare?
They could look at it, sure. Just, I mean, if you're only asking somebody for a minute to scan it to make sure you got all your stuff together and you've stated things properly, absolutely. If you ask them to write the letter, no, not going to happen. And even if it does, I mean, they could be the most well-meaning people in the world. They're busy. They got a lot of patients. And so it'll take weeks. Even when we've asked doctors to write a letter, I say, doctor, I'm going to write the letter for you based on the information that I have available to me. And just take a look at it and you can go ahead and modify it. I think I'm doing them a favor. Some of them get upset with me saying, you know, you're not a doctor. You can't write this. I said, I'm an insurance person. I'm just writing the letter to the insurance company. I'm not writing it to, you know, the Journal of Medical Affairs. No.
Right.
So let me write it for you and all that. And most of them are, you know, they're finally receptive and going, yeah, I can do that because it takes them 30 seconds.
Mhm.
Just
It
recall
takes them
though,
3 weeks, but it takes them 30 seconds.
yeah, just recall though that the insurance person is not a medical person. They just really understand coding and things like the administrative decisions that health insurance companies make. So they're really not a good person to review your letter. A better person to review your letter is someone who is medically literate, and it can be, you know, a friend who is in the healthcare field. But I think an advocate is very helpful in this situation, a medical advocate. We can review those kinds of letters. In fact, the one that Jordan was referring to, I had to totally rewrite because it was just all over the place and it was not written in a way that would be acceptable or understandable by.
He's referring to the
insurance
client's
company.
letter, not to my letter. Just so we're clear.
Actually, I didn't see your letter, but that's okay.
Mine was a lot shorter. I mean, Alan's absolutely right, but there's a middle point. So I am medically literate, but not nearly as medically literate as Alan. So if you have a good advocate on your side, but Alan's quite right that when I'm writing the letter, I'm looking at it from an advocacy and administrative position, which is going to be 75%, if not more of it. I don't get into a whole lot of medical speak. And when I'm asking the doctor to write the letter, I said, just make sure I have these 2 sentences correct about the medical necessity for this and why you recommended that. And that's it. I'm not trying to put words in their mouth about what's necessary here, because I'm also not trying to build a medical case. I'm not trying to send this person to a surgical center and have doctors be talking to themselves and trying to get them to talk to someone in plain language, someone who's also not medically literate, and make sure they understand what we're looking for. I just want to make sure I've got the phrasing correctly and I haven't misused any medical terms, so that we're clear. Because what Alan's now talking about, when you get really deep into medical advocacy, is where you've got a real mess of a situation where the carrier and the doctor and everyone's required to unpack it to see if they can get it covered. That's a whole different level of medical appeal and medical denial, an important one. But 90% of what we're talking about can be accomplished with what we're saying here. Just so we're clear.
No, those are great points. Know what you're dealing with. For most medical appeals, we need to follow the guidelines that you guys have just outlined. I just want to reiterate something that Alan, you said earlier too, is like, we need to keep records, right, of everything. So we want to keep the records of all of our procedures, the medicines, the second opinions, the prior authorizations, everything. Keep a record, dates, times, who we spoke to. This is critically important, right? Because we may need to use this material later.
Yeah, I may be old fashioned, but I still have manila folders.
So do I.
And in addition to folders that I keep on my computer, I have hard copies of everything. And it just absolutely important to know who you spoke to, when you spoke to them, What was the conversation? What was said? What was the determination? When is the person going to get back to you? Phone numbers. When you are struggling with someone, you can kindly ask to speak to their supervisor. If there's something, if you see that you're not getting anywhere with the person with whom you're speaking to at the health plan. But I think keeping a separate file is just absolutely important. And that includes after you have written your letter and you send it,
Yeah.
that goes, a hard copy goes into your file. If you fax it, make sure you keep a record of the fax that was sent. You can print out your report to show that it was absolutely sent. And if you mail it, make sure you use either return receipt required, certified mail. If you are in a hurry and have the finances, send it next day, 2-day via UPS, FedEx, keep the tracking number, go online, see if they've received it. So you have all this information so that when you are in touch with the insurance company, say, we didn't get it. Well, you have the information that supports, well, gee, it was sent, it was signed for, it was received, everything.
The other thing with regard to the records is make sure someone else in your immediate sphere of whatever knows where the file is. Something happens to you, or you get sick, you're on medication, you can't remember and all that. Another person should know where the file is. You're responsible for it, but whatever.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to mention along these lines, we've overlooked it, is that carriers have a default mechanism. They'll put it even in the benefit statement, or when you write to them, they'll send you this thing. They'll say, we have a grievance procedure. Well, you're not aggrieved. You are arguing about whether this was denied properly. The grievance procedure, and I know that this is true in California, I don't know about other states, but there is a state law that says you have to give somebody 30 days to file a grievance.
It takes 30 years, but
yeah, well, it will take 30 years, but you got 30 days to file it. But here's the problem. The carrier will say, we have a grievance procedure, and I get people coming to me, I filed this grievance and they said everything was fine. The grievance process is to accuse the carrier of not following their own guidelines or getting you things in a timely manner and all that. Carriers are rarely guilty of that. And this goes back to my original point where they're trying to get this stuff off their desk. If they stamp it denied and shoot it back to you in a timely manner, they have complied with their requirements, even though they may have barely read your file. And then they have to respond in a certain period of time when you file a medical appeal. And again, that's why short, concise, and so on. So when they hit you with well, you can file a grievance, don't even bother.
Okay.
Don't even bother, because that's not your situation. You are not saying that they burned you by, playing around with procedures. You're just saying, I'm trying to file this appeal.
That's a good lead in, though, Joyce, to what are your options when you've gone through their appeal process?
Well, hang on just a second. Before we go there, Alan, I just want to make that clear for the audience. So what we're saying is that if you get a denial, you would then file an appeal, which is a different kind of process. You do not want to go into grievance. If they try to push you that way,
Correct.
You want to say, no, that I'm not.
No, they're required to state that, and the benefit statement will have the grievance process attached to it, because at least in California, it's state law. It's not they're really trying to push you off. They have to tell you that, but that's not what you're doing. So ignore it and move on to the appeal process. Correct.
Okay, great.
And there are different levels of appeal. There's the first level, and then there's a second level of appeal. And that is by the health plan, their final determination. So your next step is an independent medical review. You are able to request that. Health plans will give you instructions on how to file an independent medical review.
Okay.
And that's
so we're clear. First level appeal is the letter that we were talking about. Alan's now talking about the second level of appeal after they pushed back and said, we still don't see it. There we go. Sorry.
Yeah. And the independent medical review is very important. And it's really what we were pushed to for the client that Jordan had mentioned with the daughter that had a behavioral health issue. So with the independent medical review, that is the final arbiter. In other words, they are able to overturn the second level of appeal that a health plan has. So don't give up after your second level of appeal is not overturned.
Okay, so I send my letter of appeal and they write back to me and say, sorry, it's still denied. Then I would go on to I would request an independent medical review as my next
Not
step.
necessarily. I mean,
Okay.
it depends on what they've said.
Okay.
And maybe they've given you an indication. So, well, if you can give us this, then we might be, willing to go ahead and do it. So again,
Okay.
don't panic, take a deep breath. What are they saying? What are they asking? What do I need to do? You don't want to start bringing in the big guns until it's absolutely necessary, because they may just be arguing about we need additional information from the doctor that says this. We need additional information from the hospital. We haven't even received the hospital chart. It's not that we're denying your claim. We're just telling you we can't pay this claim based on the lack of information from the hospital. We don't even know you were there, that kind of thing. So there could be 3 or 4, pieces of conversation before we get into the case Alan mentioned. This went on for a year, and we had to go through all these phases before we finally got to, you know what? You, the carrier, are arguing with this facility, and one of you is wrong. And it turned out the carrier was wrong. But we couldn't do that on day one.
Right.
We had to get through all the crap. And not once did we file agreements, because the carrier never did anything wrong in all that time. They just kept pushing back, going, we don't see it. We don't get it. Our internal review person said, well, yeah, that's why we need an external review person, because your internal review person, they can't help it, but they automatically have a bias. Let's find a way to deny this claim. It was $100,000. I don't blame them, but that doesn't make them right. But it does make it longer.
Okay, so this is good. So I may put in my appeal letter and they might write back and say it's still denied because we still need more information. So
they may say that, they may not, which means when you call them and ask them, but then they will tell you on the phone, we still need more information. So it isn't always on the benefit, because that takes time.
Okay, so they might just deny it, and what they really need is more information. So if I get another denial, give them a phone call and say, hey, can you tell me why? Or is there something
you or your advocate make the phone call? Yeah,
advocate.
What's going on with this now? Then they look it up, because now they got you on the phone. Well, it says here we're still missing records from blah, 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 blah. Why didn't you say so? Because we don't have that kind of time, and the computer only has a footnote for it denied. So again, that's why you don't want to bang your head against the wall. They're following a procedure. Whether the procedure is good or not, or whether it should be better or not, we don't need to argue all that. The bottom line is they're at least throwing it out to you and saying, you need to follow, you need to take another step. You need to take another step. That's what they're telling you. It's a challenge. It's fun. It's exciting, or it's frustrating, but it's an invitation to continue the dialogue. You want to really ratchet it down. An invitation.
So it's a good point, I think, Joyce, that Jordan makes, which is early on, try to find out what does the health plan really need.
Right.
So if you get that early rather than at the very end, you're going to save yourself some time.
Okay, so with everything you've said, so then it comes down to your four don'ts, which I think are kind of the heart of it. I like the way you put it, don't accept the denial as final, because as you said, Jordan, they only have one button that says denied. They don't say why, and there might be a why behind that you can take care of.
Right.
Don't get frustrated and upset and paralyzed, because maybe you can just write a simple, straightforward letter or make a phone call and say, hey, what's missing?
Right. Well, you can get frustrated and angry, but don't get paralyzed. Just get over it and get on with it.
Get on with it, get over it, get on with it, and make sure you've kind of reviewed everything before you get in line with your healthcare professional, right? Your healthcare professional could be helpful, but you need to understand things a little bit yourself before you pull them into the process.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not really your first line of defense. I mean, they may not even be, it may not even be necessary to involve them at all, which is good, because they get busy and it will take time. We rarely end up calling the doctor's office for anything. Unless it's absolutely necessary.
And ask for help, right? From the right people, a patient advocate, HR, benefits managers. It depends on how big your company is, the insurance broker, right? Who else?
Right.
I think it's important that they look like us. Either they got gray hair and glasses, or they look like Angry Santa. one or the other, but clearly we have a lot of experience between us. So if they're talking to some 23-year-old rookie, is like, that's not a good idea. So
Yeah, you need somebody with experience, right? Because there's a lot of it is just like been through it before. And I mean, I think it's amazing what you're saying is they just write denied, but maybe they just need a piece of information. I mean, I think I didn't realize that myself. So.
see,
Yeah,
that's 45 years of collective wisdom right there. See, look at all the trouble I save you in just 10 seconds. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, just remember the people that are doing these initial levels of denial, they're people really with not a lot of medical knowledge and experience. They're just using guidelines. It's just like when you call for tech support, they have people who are rifling through, a manual, and they find what the manual says, but then you need to speak to their supervisor. So this is the same.
Unless
kind
you
of
really did
situation.
forget to plug in your computer, in which case nobody can help you.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. No, this is really great. So anything to say, anything that we haven't touched on or anything to say in summary? I think this was quite a great conversation.
Well, there are other organizations that can help you. Patient Advocate Association is very good. United States of Healthcare, I understand, has some good resources.
We've heard rumors.
We'll certainly want to use them. There's the Greater National Advocates. If you're looking for an advocate in your neck of the woods, or even someone outside that has national capabilities. So, use the resources. Be resourceful to look for resources to help you in whatever it is that you're trying to defend and promote.
No, that's great. Really appreciate it. As always, it's so amazing to talk with both of you, Jordan Shields and Alan Farren. And thank you so much for all of your expertise.
Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. And before you go, please check out our blog. There's many detailed blog posts for you to check out there on this topic and others that will be important to you as you navigate through your healthcare. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, because you will get on a regular basis in your inbox a knowledgeable friend who's going to make it easier and simpler for you to deal with all of your healthcare needs. Also, we have a resources page that's full of free and very important resources that you can take advantage of. So check out the blog, subscribe to our content, and check out the free resources page. Thanks again for watching. I'm Joyce Griggs for United States of Healthcare.